Dignitas dropped 3 in a row, and this is where I want to start. They bench Joshy Boy. It's the beginning of the end. Oh, I faked this out. Sorry, we're talking CLG. Nope, we're going Dignitas. They bench Joshy Boy, and Dardoch has now been benched. We've been waiting for when it was going to happen. Here it is. Dardoch now out. Acadian now in, and 3 losses this week. 4 in a row if you count last week as well. Dom, it's time.
Yep.
Please give us your Dardoch rant.
I mean, well, number one, I would just like to say that like the Dardoch benching like probably makes at least more sense than the Saligo benching. I just feel like this team was overachieving. I mean, I've said this before, but they were overachieving, and then they just instantly it up for like no reason. I think they were like 2-1 in the week where they benched Saligo, where it's like I feel like when your team that should be like a bottom tier team, I mean, they should be realistically like an 8th or 9th place team. When that team starts performing, you just let it fucking ride as long as you can. You just hold on. Just try to make sure everything's fine. If Dardoch needs to let off some steam, I don't know, you just fucking you get him a massage chair or something. Just make sure that he's relaxed afterwards. You got to do something to keep that vibe going, because like you are so lucky to be in the position you're in with 14 wins as Dignitas. And now it feels like they fucked it all up. So that's number one. Number two, I absolutely fucking hate when an org says this player was benched. I feel like that terminology from an organization is just like weird. Like, I mean, I'll say that shit. LS will say that shit. Like, people can say that colloquially in the community or whatever, but an org saying that term, it just feels so unnecessary. It seems so much harsher than what you could just say in order to potentially bring him back. Like, obviously, when Dardoch then like goes back, like it's gonna hit a lot harder. It's gonna be a lot harder to get him back on board if you ever want to use him again. If you're using the terminology like, yo, this guy got fucking benched. Like, benched sounds so much like you can just say, hey, Acadian is starting for game 2. Like, after day 1, for day 2, we're going to use like Acadian in the jungle. You know, he has like synergy with Yasui from Academy, and we think that this might be better for getting us a win. Like, there's so many different ways that you could phrase it where it doesn't sound as bad, and it won't be like as damaging long term to your relationship with your own players.
I agree. I think there's a counterpoint to this though. In the event that Dignitas's benching fails, it actually removes power from them going forward. What I mean by that is, like, if they keep losing and Dardoch is brought back in, right? Dardoch then has a lot more power than had nothing ever happened before, because then they realize that there's no alternative, right? I imagine if we see this with any other benching, so like if Alfari, right, or Sven, like let's say that Sven comes back, the same rings true, where the person that was benched or was removed then suddenly comes into a lot of power if they're ever brought back on.
I mean, if they are brought back on, but that's provided that they have like solid mental and they're not going to be spiteful at all from like the way you portray them to the community. And I feel like when you're dealing with a player like Dardoch, who's already so like emotionally fragile, like then saying like publicly, yeah, he was just benched after this game. I feel like, you know, you might not get the best Dardoch if you ever choose to bring him back.
Right.
Yeah. Right. My question is, have we had a benching of a player where they did well and then they swapped back to someone else? When was the last time that happened and there was success? Maybe. Yeah. When was the last time that happened?
So a player came in, they did really well, and then it swapped back to the original player?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the closest.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Griffin.
Oh, the Doran sword
yeah,
thing?
Remember Doran was
yeah.
actually just a much better top laner, and the team played way better with him, and he could play better champions, and Chovy didn't break his back every game.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that one?
That's a good one.
And Sword came in, yeah.
Someone in the chat said Acadian Greg. I think that was another example of like, all right, Acadian was like one of the best junglers in the league. You guys went to finals. Okay, you're splitting time going into summer. Like, that was pretty weird.
It was them two, and then they threw in Spica in playoffs. That I think that's
that was like when everything just went to complete shit, and they were like, please, just anyone play.
Yeah, and it turns out was not that bad of a decision now, but at that time, yeah, okay. Because you look at all the substitutions that have been made so far. Danny's been probably the best one. I guess that's not a sub.
Yeah.
You would say Abadage.
Well, I mean, when you're replacing
that's not a
someone as
sub.
bad as like
Please,
definitely
Jesus,
was,
no.
you know, I just think I just feel like it's
Definitely was not that
way
bad.
easier to look good. because
Come
it's
on,
really
man.
just
I'm
about,
trying
like, the
to be.
differential,
I'm
you
trying
know?
to be good and unbiased. I'm giving Danny's good. We don't have to say Danny's good.
Yes. And relative to how bad definitely was, it
was
looks like
not
an
that
amazing
bad.
change. Like it's
It
the
was not that
disparity
bad.
that makes it such a good
You
change.
look at Jizuke's coin flipping, dude. That's what he has to play with. Oh,
Yeah. And it looks still better with Danny.
Rather would rather
that
flip
bad.
a coin than not have a coin at all. You know what I mean?
Jesus. All right.
You'd rather
So-
flip a coin than flip a turd. Perfect.
King hasn't looked.
my-
King hasn't looked better than Sven. Yasui
True.
hasn't looked that much better than Soligo, if at all. Pretty came in for a week for Insanity. Like some of these moves are like, hey, maybe it's I want to get them stage time, and that's how they've been I guess positioned by the team. But this was just straight like benched. This was straight benched, and like you said, LS, like there isn't coming back from this. Even Doublelift talked about it, right? Doublelift talked about the tactical benching on his stream and saying they lost that one game to Janet Top, and they were like, Peter, we need you to come back, and he's like, fuck no. Like this is just a baffling move. I think it has to be a baffling move or something there, because you now are at a point where you cannot go back and you're using Acadian for the rest of the way, and it just didn't feel like a smart long-term decision here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just see like these types of things, and it's like, I mean, the results are a lot worse, right? Like at least Dignitas, when they were running their original lineup, was winning some games. Now they literally look like they could be the worst team with the Yasui Acadian lineup. Like they might be just the worst team in LCS, right? Like Golden Guardians beat them. And then you look at the other teams, like maybe FlyQuest could potentially be worse. It looks like CLG is starting to get their shit together, like somewhat. So I think that you went from having like a roster that was probably never going to win, but it was probably going to place like 5th, 6th, or like had enough of a lead in the standings to place 5th, 6th, and like get you into playoffs, to now like you probably still make playoffs because you have such a lead in the standings, but you almost have no chance to like win like even the first series once you get there.
Playoffs. Yep.
Yeah.
This is the issue.
Yeah,
It's also really weird, right? One of the comments, or one of the commenters apparently was like, in some interview, the coach was like a month ago or something, right? Talking about how all the other coaches had just failed and Dardoch's behavioral issues aren't a problem anymore and all this other stuff, right? So this was in one of the Reddit comments. Now, this is pretty interesting, because if we've learned anything, things are not actually a month in advance. You know, so maybe this was indeed a spur of the moment decision.
Nah, that would never happen. You got to just listen to the coach on these ones. You know, like they're the ones that have the power. They're the older ones. They're more mature. Like, surely they wouldn't have ego problems or potentially mismanage the team in any way.